for me, I can see all these things because my own beginnings were in poverty.
Yeah.
And I started with nothing, absolutely nothing. And I've had to struggle for every single step of the way. And so there's no doubt about the fact that I honestly, and in Haiti, when I went to Haiti, I didn't mix with the political class who were running the country and having revolutions. I mixed with the peasant people in the mountains who were unschooled.
And with the sheep.
No, well, there were no sheep. Oh, they they were in the mountains, and they had no schools, they had no nothing. And I used to go up there, and they would allow me to sleep on one of their floors. And they taught me their language, they taught me their culture, they taught me their humanity. And suddenly I become somebody when I'm in a pulpit and they're in front of me, they say, he understands us. Now that's the link that we have to work to build again. Those people representing us understand us. And that you only understand people, not by reading books, but by going out to visit them, sharing their activities and their concerns. That's what I worry about, that we've lost that personal touch between rulers and ruled.
Yeah, but particularly with the US, I was wondering what caused that.
Yeah, what
that crazy victory in terms of a win for a Republican president.
Well,
winning popular vote.
I don't think the labels Republican and Democrat mean anything anymore. But in terms of the crazy result, which it certainly was, as I've already said, I don't think I can offer an understanding of it. But what Trump has managed to do is persuade those ordinary people that he does understand them. Because he speaks their language, he's rough like they are. He's not an intellectual. He's never been to university. He's the only man, they told me, who has written more books than he's read, which is an interesting way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it simply means he's persuaded them that he's one of us. And yet he's a billionaire who's conducted fraud, cooked his books. In South Korea, the poor president has had to resign from office for things less than that. But he's got away with it all because he's got this manner about him that has somehow, don't ask me how, but somehow got through that pain barrier and reached people who say, it's good to have someone who speaks like we speak, who knows us like that, instead of all this parading of political language and ideas and concepts that are above our heads and we don't understand them anymore.
Yeah, let's move a bit more to your to the work you're doing currently in the Parliament in the UK, because that's where you're mostly most qualified to speak on. And specifically, what infuriates people, as far as I know, with Labour so far, Labour government so far, would be their tax policies. How do you think that's an effective way of raising the revenue for the government, and which taxes are specifically effective for that?
All I can say is that yes, 2% on the national insurance was one way of raising more money, and they did it in the budget. Yes, they have found other ways of tinkering with the budget, but they're definitely not going to mess around with the fiscal rules in order just to get more money. But what they've done is that the money they've got has been given to improve the conditions of working people. So you've got a living wage that's been increased for ordinary working people, and you know that's and you know that I think that that's got to be good. But what's waiting to be done? You see, we've only been with the Labour government for 6 months.
Yeah, I think people are way too impatient with
too
impatient with governments in general.
That's right.
Not only Labour.
That's right. You're dead right. But before Labour could really build new structures and find a way forward, they had first of all to clear the ground of all the mess that they inherited. And at the moment, we're at the stage of clearing the ground that they inherited. And, you know, in the meantime, of course, people are impatient to see The health service improved, jobs improved, and it's at a time of economic downturn, not just for Britain, but for the world. China reported just today, this morning, growth of 5% last year. Now you think, well, what we die to have 5% growth in our economy, but in China, it's the worst they've had for decades, and they're worried about it. There's a downturn in the economy, and it's not a good time for rescuing a situation, and that's what the Labour Party is trying to do. I keep on saying to people, in a year's time, let's have the conversation you're trying to have now, because it's only then that we'll see if the policies have produced firm ground upon which we can build structures and look for a better future.
What are, once again, the problems that the Labour government has inherited from the previous Conservative rule throughout, like, 20 years, I think, around 20 years it was?
14 years, yes.
Yeah.
Right, yes. No, well, that's true.
Except for the migration and hotels problems that you have already mentioned.
Yeah. No, I think that, well, it's just that the Labour government at the moment finds itself in exactly the place that the Labour government elected for Tony Blair in 1997
okay.
Had. Namely, you've got schools that are falling down, they've got bad concrete in them, they were built badly, and hundreds of schools need to be reconstructed. You have hospitals that need to be modernized, and although Boris Johnson said that he had 44 new hospitals he was going to deliver, he delivered none of them. So you've got all the building, you've got all the repairing, you've got all of that to do. What's happening now is similar to what was happening when Tony Blair was elected in 1997. And remember, he had nearly 200 majority. But what did he find? He found that the finances that the previous Conservative, they'd been there for 13, 14 years, had completely ruined. He found that in 5 years of government, with a massive majority, he spent tons of money, and it was on repairing schools, which had been allowed to deteriorate under the previous administration, and hospitals, and other infrastructural elements, and so on. So at the end of 5 years, the people looked and said, well, what has he done? Because you couldn't see it. The schools were still there. You couldn't see an improved school. Now, it's happening again that Keir Starmer has to invest money in schools whose concrete was badly done. He has a Grenfell Tower to reimburse all the people who were damaged by that, and a post office scandal and a blood scandal generating billions of indebtedness, which the government's going to have to repay. The hospitals are falling down, and all of that is needing his attention to pump money in to prop up what will show very little. The difference between Tony Blair's time and now is that Tony Blair came in when there was an economic boom. Now we're in a time of depression worldwide, not Britain, globally. And so Keir Starmer is having to do the same things as Tony Blair, but without help from the economy. And that seems to make it much worse. So people are going to have to be patient. They're going to have to wait and see. In a year's time, perhaps we'll see the green shoots, the beginnings. If the foundations are solid, you can build on it. And I'm hoping that the foundations he's laying, problematic as they are, and I accept that, but they are in the direction we need to go to make them solid so that we can begin then to put structures, growth on top of it, and begin to show something in the 5 years after that. That's what I think is going to happen.
As a sort of final question, of course, the Conservative Party, after a big loss in the election, has to reshape a bit, and they have chosen a new leader, Kemi Badenoch. What do you think about Kemi Badenoch? Because to me, she represents this kind of new idea of culture wars, and she's an interesting way to approach Conservative Party.
Yeah, well, it's
certainly different leadership than
I'm just
usually.
Interested in the last 25 years of the Conservative Party and the number of leaders they have elected. It was about 8. I mean, you know, they go
fast.
on, and because they leave the choice of leader to the membership. The membership, on the whole, are old age pensioners like me drinking coffee or beer and choosing the new leader of their Conservative Party. But as far as Kemi Badenoch is concerned, she recognizes that the Conservative Party made mistakes. She said so in a public speech. She's admitted to the fact they got it wrong, and they must now learn the lessons of getting it wrong so they don't do it all over again when they come into power. On immigration, I've always found it, both with her and with Priti Patel, with James Cleverly, people from second or third generation immigrants who are as tough on immigration as they've been. I mean, I find it extraordinary. Rishi Sunak comes from a very wealthy thing, so they can pay their way in any old time. But Kemi Badnoch and James Cleverly and Priti Patel, all of them, you go back a couple of generations, and they all came here as migrants in order to improve their lives. Good, wonderful. But why are they now so hard on migrants themselves? I find it difficult. My contemporary at school was a man called Michael Howard. He was a leader of the Conservative Party for a while. And Michael is a Jew, and his parents fled from, I think, Romania at the time the Nazis were rising, and found secure accommodation here, well, in Wales, where I come from. He was at school with me. And so I find it hard that he was Home Secretary with one of the harshest regimes the Conservatives have ever produced on migration and on crime. I don't understand it. So it's not just in America with Donald Trump that I don't understand. It's also here. I don't understand all of these things.
Well, I hate to stop the conversation here, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. But thank you so much for your time, and it has been a pleasure to have you on.
It's been a pleasure, Volodymyr.